Well, why don't we start? Maybe with you giving. We've been connected on Instagram for quite a while now. How long have we been connected? Probably quite a while, right? Year?
Yeah, it's been years
Okay, yeah.
since
So
since I started following you. I think the first things I heard were from YouTube.
okay, wow, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so yeah, a while then. So we've been connected for a while, and we have some fascinating chats. And I know that you have a very unique kind of experience of Christianity, of faith, that a lot of people will find very interesting. Some people might resonate with entirely. I doubt it though. Maybe a lot of people will resonate with a lot of it though. And so I thought it'd be really fascinating to unpack that. But why don't you kind of just give a very kind of broad overview of who you are, where you're coming from,
Okay.
and then we can kind of dive into a bit of your story. But I'm really intrigued to, just get a rough idea, a picture of the person behind the person I talk to every day. And I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have no idea who you are, and so it would be good
No,
for them to get some uh, sort of box to put you in before we start
sure.
breaking that box apart. Um,
That's fine. So I'm from the East Coast in the USA, Delaware, Maryland area. Um, my we're just gonna start way, way back with my grandpa.
let's do it.
So, my grandpa was Amish, and
Nice.
he left the church or the Amish church, because he had a green roof, and they told him that wasn't acceptable. Like, I think they all had black roofs, or I don't even know what the color was. It wasn't the right color. It was too worldly. So my grandpa said,
Wow.
"Screw this," and went to the Mennonite church, which was just like a less conservative level of
Right.
roof.
That's like the rebellious option for Amish people, is like maybe go for like a
Yeah,
Mennonite kind of community.
yeah, yeah. It totally is. My grandpa was very rebellious and went
That's
straight to the
hilarious.
Mennonites.
I love it. I
Um,
love it.
so then, my mom grew up Mennonite, conservative Mennonite, and there's like a million different types of Mennonite. Um, so she wore cape dresses and a covering when she became a Christian. Like, she had to do those things. And like, they had a lot of people might confuse Amish and Mennonite, but Amish, the difference is that Amish has no electricity and Mennonites do.
Mm-hmm.
And like, Mennonites are like the next level of worldliness. Like, we're allowed to like go shopping, have different colored clothing. I mean, definitely nothing flashy,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah. So my mom grew up Mennonite, and she has stories. She came out in a skirt and blouse one time, and she has stories of her mom like ripping clothes off of her, and like telling her these things weren't appropriate. And like, she talked about the time like when she became a Christian, and she had to wear a covering, and she was walking out the lane just crying, going to the bus, because she didn't know why she had to wear this covering and didn't want to.
Wow.
So, that being said, my mom left the church,
Oh,
the
wow.
Mennonite church,
Yep.
and went to another level of conservative, a little bit lesser,
Just
a
bit
little,
by bit, we're whittling
yeah,
away in your family.
yeah. So I don't know why anyone's shocked that I'm like going to the next
That's
level. Like, this
hilarious.
is the trend in our family. So come on,
That's
everyone.
hilarious.
So my mom went to something called ATI. Are you familiar with
Okay.
it?
I don't think
ATI
so.
Bill Gothard, maybe you've heard of
Yeah.
him.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Very much so.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's like the leader of this. I guess it's a homeschooling thing, and I mean, I'm just gonna call it a cult because that's what it felt like. But
Mm.
it's like there were certain hairstyles that were acceptable. White shirts, navy blue bottoms. We would get wisdom booklets. So my family homeschooled until I was 7th grade, and we would get
Okay.
wisdom booklets for every, I don't know, quarter or something. And there were these white books. I can still just like feel them. And we would have like family devotions, and we would read from the wisdom booklet, and it was about like just like the integrity of a man and what a woman should do and what that looks like exactly. And it was all lined out perfectly.
That's so fascinating. So like they just delivered these things off like every kind of like quarter. You get your little update on like, hey, this is what it looks like to be a good like disciple. If you're a man, be this manly person. If you're a woman, you know, make sure you, I don't know, wear a certain length of skirt.
Yeah. I wish I would have gotten one from my mom because I'm pretty sure she still has them. It would have been interesting to read on here.
Yeah.
They're in her attic.
Sounds fascinating. It sounds like the JW's kind of watchtower or something like that, you know, like they have the kind of update magazines that kind of get circulated every now and again with like whatever they're spinning. I don't know the ins and outs of that too much. So, but yeah, that's quite fascinating. So this wasn't to do with homeschooling. This wasn't like, you know, you're getting curriculum sent out. This is just for being in this movement. You kind of got an update with teaching, kind of like a devotional thing that you're supposed to work through or something.
Yeah. Wow. Yep. And that, we did a Becca homeschooling program, which is also Christian. So, and I'm pretty sure ATI probably had their hand in like what curriculum to get. So I'm the youngest of 4, and my siblings had much more of an intense time than I did. Like mom and dad were much more, like my mom gave me an Enrique Iglesias CD when I was like 13.
Whoa, nice.
And my sister would hide, what's that Latin American Christian music girl, Jackie Velasquez? Did you ever hear about her?
No.
Well, she was a contemporary Christian, like, and my sister had to hide her CDs.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Well, she sounds terrible person. Yeah.
I mean, I think it had like rock music, like it had
some guitars, like drums or something, or
drums, electric guitars.
Isn't this always the way, by the way? So like I'm an older sibling, so I'm going to complain right now, but like my brother, the youngest brother, got away with like murder. He could do anything, and I was like, I have like shed blood, sweat and tears to get to this level by the time I was like 14 or 15 or 16 or whatever. This was the standard I killed to get. I moaned and I complained and I did chores for like years to get to the standards. And then he's like 9 or something. He's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And mom's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you can get away with it. And I'm like, what is this younger sibling thing? So here's you like running around singing in Greek, you know, like I can be your hero or whatever. That's
yeah.
You know, like you're singing away and your sister's sitting thinking like, Bethany.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
Actually, my siblings totally feel that way. Yeah. So were there just 2 kids in your family?
No, there was 4, now 5. My parents adopted when I'd left home as well. So yeah, it was a pretty full family. And I had, like none of us had it hard. We had a great life, but the oldest sibling always paints the hardest picture. But I believe it. Pretty easy. But
we have 2 kids, and I know I'm so hard on. It's just I know I've made so many mistakes as far as just like having the oldest child and just like having so high expectations for him and being like, is this a normal expectation or is it just like me being like a too high expectations? I don't know, but it's stressful.
I just don't know if like there's ever like, I don't know, we don't have kids and I'm like setting my bar so low and I'm just assuming that I'm going to traumatize and completely destroy my child on some level. And if I try and work too hard in any direction, I'll probably just go the other end of the spectrum and traumatize them in a fresh new way on that side as well. And I'm just like, you know what, I'm just gonna make sure that I set them up so they have some great therapy options. It's gonna be fine.
Exactly.
You know, it'd be great. So who knows?
I've probably traumatized them by saying like, guys, I'll pay for your therapy.
Yeah, there you go.
We'll start up a fund right now, and like this is me saying I'm sorry.
Normal people are saving for college and we're like, maybe therapy actually.
No, seriously, I would totally do that. Oh my goodness.
It's funny.
Yeah,
I love it. Okay, so where were we? So you are getting like Enrique Iglesias. Am I saying that right?
Well, yeah, no, it's okay. So the reason I got an Enrique Iglesias CD was because we lived in Central America for 3 years.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So we were homeschooling, and then I got to 7th grade and my mom was like, you're too rebellious. I can't handle you. And sent me to Christian school.
In Central America?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay,
So,
sorry. I'm like, that's like the most extreme version of like, oh, we'll send you to a boarding school, like, or whatever, like in another country, I'm just like, whoa.
that
It's
would
like
have been
intense.
awesome.
Yeah, it would
No.
be pretty cool actually as a whatever 12-year-old or whatever. You'd be like, yes, sweet.
Yeah. No, they sent me to a Christian school in my hometown.
Okay.
And but then we were, I guess it was like this. So mom sent me to school halfway through the year. And the summer before I went to school, we went to the Mennonite Conference because we were still, even though we were not Mennonite, we still did a lot of Mennonite things. Like I basically grew up Mennonite because it's basically a culture more than anything. And so where's my train of thought? Okay, so we went to a Mennonite conference, and while we were there, another very important point. My parents were missionaries in Nicaragua in the 70s. And actually my sister is Nicaraguan. They adopted her while they were there. And anyway, we were at the Conservative Mennonite Conference that summer before. So I was like 11, I guess. And while they were there, some of the leaders asked them if they would be up for going back down to Nicaragua because there was a retreat center that needed maintenance, and like it was going to be used for work teams to come down to stay, and they thought my parents would do a good job at it. So my mom was just super excited about it because she loved like living in Nicaragua. She loves the culture. And my dad too, they love it. So me and my brother were the only two at home. So we went to Nicaragua with my parents for 3 years. I went for 3 years. My brother Steve went for 1 year. And that was a really good experience. That was, I mean, it was crazy, but it was so, like, it got me out of the bubble that I would have been in.
Sure,
and like, it was another Christian bubble, but it was still different enough to allow like my brain to realize there's differences,
Was it more diverse in its Christianity then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we went to a church because there were so many different American missionaries down there, the church was just a conglomeration of denominations. So yeah.
I love it. It's like like the expat military base or whatever, I mean, like, it's like you go to like, wherever it is. I was just talking to my sister-in-law and she grew up like in like the expat community, but like it's so fascinating when you go to another part of the world and you go into like a small village and yet there's an American military base or there's something like that, or like it's a heavy missionary area and you're like, every other shop in this town is English and I'm in Holland or Germany or something. You're like, what's happening? And then you realize, oh, there's Americans here and they've kind of like taken over this town or something. It's like a little America within a country. And so it always makes you laugh. But the idea of just like this little like church full of missionaries from different parts of the US, like I love it.
Yeah. And there was a really cool school that I went to down there that was for I guess it was Christian, and there were Nicaraguans that attended it as well. So but Nicaragua is a very Catholic religious country anyway. So did that for 3 years. And then inside of that, I met a work team came down from Delaware, and a youth group work team came down. And I was friends with some of the people on that team. And they were all like, there's a single boy on this team. You should talk to him. And so I was like, okay, little 14-year-old Bethany. And so I did talk to him, and we were writing emails. And then I came home and we started dating because we only lived an hour apart, ironically. And then 4 years later, we got married.
Wow. So what age was this you got married?
19.
Okay. But that's like on brand for like, homeschool Christian within a very intense community, like the kind of Mennonites, like it's very kind of, okay. I got it. Yeah. That's intense though. Really intense. It feels it. Like I'm hearing it. I'm like, whoa, that's intense.
It was very intense. Oh my goodness. It was so intense. So dating, the 4 years we dated was like just trauma, just pure trauma, because we'd make out and then I'd just be like hell in my brain because I couldn't tell anyone and I couldn't talk to anyone about it. And like I would try to tell some people and then it would just like bomb completely and they wouldn't know how to help me because it was always just like, it was nothing. No, every single person I told, like I tried telling my youth pastor because I was just like, this is somebody that's going to help me. He's a youth pastor. He's going to help me. And it was awkward. And like, I told him and then he immediately went and like told somebody else. And I guess he probably did it because he was like, I don't want to be in like, I don't know. He probably just, maybe he wanted to protect himself, which makes sense, I guess. Right. And
sure.
I guess, I don't know. Like
it gets so weird when that whole world like crosses all the wrong lines and then has no concept of being able to have a normal conversation at the same time. You know, like does like both sides of that wrong, where it crosses boundaries and becomes really inappropriate a lot. The church with their youth and things like that. But then on the flip side, they never actually engage their youth in healthy ways about sex or things like that.
Exactly.
And so it's like you're doing this wrong on both counts. You're protecting yourself, but not protecting the people. I don't know, like it's a weird one, right? So what was the kind of code of conduct within your community then? Like was it, I mean, I imagine fairly strict, but like, I mean, you're talking like you're making out with your boyfriend and you're like, holy crap, I need to have a meeting with my youth pastor. Like that's, I mean, even for all the kind of evangelical purity culture, you know, get your purity ring on, all that. I'm just realizing I left my wedding ring in my climbing bag. You put your purity ring on, all these different stuff, like that's pretty intense. But this sounds like, I mean, even within that, a lot of people will be like, well, yeah, of course you would like kiss your boyfriend or, you know, whatever. Like there's the lines are varied on that path, but it sounds like your lines were very easy to reach.
Yeah, very easy to reach. And both of my brothers and their girlfriends had babies before, or got pregnant before they were married. And so like, I was also dealing with like, I cannot be like them, like, which, I mean, they were fine. They were fine. Like they have beautiful children and they're fine. But because of all our religious beliefs, it was like, they have sinned. And it was just, I remember so my sister-in-law, Sarah, when her and my brother, Steve, came and told my parents about being pregnant, my parents were just like devastated. And there was just like silence and just devastation. And Sarah, I remember Sarah being like, this is not how my parents responded. Like my parents like gave me a hug and told me congratulations. And and like that was a window that I was like, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't be responding
different way to
like
do this.
That. Yeah, there's a different way. And that's like, I went that way. Like that sounds much nicer. So I feel like I'm not going on a very straight line right now.
No, it's good. Straight lines are like not ever really occurring on this podcast. I've probably had like one or two chats with people that went very like kind of like, and like honestly they're my least favorite podcasts. I'm like, no, I want to go off and talk about this thing for half an hour and then come back. Or so no, it's great. It's really fascinating. What do you think that is? Like what, like, because I'm intrigued by this a lot. And I'm very aware I have my own responses to different things. And I look back at my past and how I respond to certain things like that. Oh, that person got pregnant before marriage. Oh, the person I'm dating did this, or like, and we have these kind of like very visceral reactions as Christians to some of these things. Like, what do you think that is rooted in? Like, or at least for the people in your community that were, because there's obviously something going on that caused you to see your brothers get pregnant with their partners and for you to be like, God, I don't want to end up doing that, even though you were like, but it's fine, like they've got a kid and it's healthy and it's fine. So you knew it was fine, but there was something in you that was like, oh God, no, I don't want to go through that, whatever that is. Or do you know what I mean? Like what do you think, what do you think are the dynamics that are going on in these kind of like communities of faith that cause that fear, whatever?
I'm sure it's just like some like demented concept of sex, like sex outside of marriage is just like, I don't even know what word I would use for it. Wicked.
Mm.
Like, it's just a very tangible sign that you are not walking in the Holy Spirit, or
Mm.
you're not with, you're not in the will of God or whatever. Like, you're just giving into your flesh. And like, that's the worst. Your flesh is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
wicked. You need to beat that out of you. And I'm sure that's what it's connected to, right? And I mean, I know it is, because I see it in myself. Like, I still have issues with like sexuality, and I'm
Mm.
like I don't, like, I know my brain is messed up about sex. And like, I've seen on your Instagram, like, you post stuff about like any form of social media that's talking about sexuality and like being okay. Like, I'm still like like, is this okay?
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's a
like,
big one. It's a big one.
yeah, and like talking about my kids about sex, like, what I'm gonna do and what I actually feel are two different things. Like, what I'm feeling is like absolute terror that they're like
That's
falling
funny.
into the pit of hell. But I'm gonna be like, I trust you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
You
so
know?
funny, isn't it? Like I've been thinking about this a lot recently, like just how much this affected me. And I was thinking about it recently just in the context of my first marriage, which
Uh-huh.
was great. I love my first marriage. I love my first
Mhm.
wife. But I had so much shit I was bringing to the table as this kind of like very passionate Christian that was like traveling around speaking and had this kind of whole thing that was whatever. And like, I brought so much baggage and shame and guilt and um, need for people to perceive even my own sex life, even somehow like, like it's
Okay.
like, God forbid someone finds out that I did X before I got married,
Oh,
or
I know.
even like whatever, and or God forbid someone finds out that my wife thinks X or I think that, and like there's so much like what other people think about something that was
Yes.
perfectly fine and healthy. I brought so much crap to that relationship. Like frequently, I never wanted that to end, and it was the decision of my partner at the time, Sarah. She was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's not working for me. And I really fought hard. And actually, today I'm like, God, go, girl. That was such a good decision. This was not a healthy
Wow.
relationship for either of us. I'm so hope that worked out really well for you, because you made a decision that I wasn't able to, because I was so, you know, terrified of like, more so than like, is this healthy for me and you, and what should we do moving forwards? I was more driven by, well, even if it's not healthy for us, I can't get divorced. I couldn't have that.
Yeah.
I couldn't have this. It's
Yeah.
all these kind of expectations, right? God forbid they find
Yeah.
out someone got pregnant before marriage. God forbid that person gets divorced. God forbid. And we have these kind of like things, but most of it seems like so heavily linked. It's not even in what God will think. It's what will like
Oh,
the
yeah.
Andersons think or whatever,
Will I
Um,
still have
yeah.
friends?
Yeah, absolutely. The community is brutal on this stuff. Like, it's just we're watching there's a new Netflix special called Teenage Bounty Hunters, I think it's called. It's pretty funny. It's pretty mindless as well. But it's about these young teenage girls that decide to become bounty hunters. And it's ridiculous in every area. But they go to this really intense, like, private Christian school, and it is hilarious. But like, it's brutal. Like, they are like scapegoating like to the max anyone that does anything wrong, and it's like, boom, you are out, you are ostracized, you
Ah.
are a leper. And it's obviously an extreme kind of picture of it, a bit of a caricature,
Mhm.
but it's kind of true.
Yeah, no, it actually, I was thinking about it as I was mowing the lawn today,
Okay.
about like how the concept of people pleasing, and how most of my anxiety about all of this is simply about people pleasing. And I
Mm.
feel like my only way to tell what other people are thinking is by the things that I previously thought.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew how I would respond if somebody was like having sex before marriage, or divorcing their spouse or something like that. And it was always like, I either need to like help you and like give you advice on how to get better so you don't do that
Mm-hmm.
anymore, or just like, okay, well, we can't be in a relationship because you're making bad decisions and
Yeah.
sorry about your luck. And so because I know that I did that, then I'm like, I don't want other people to do that to me at all.
Right.
I just want everyone to be like my friend and
yeah. But it's weird as well because and we're probably right a lot of the time, right? A lot of the time that probably is exactly how people will respond. But we don't actually know that. And we're actually almost making that decision for someone else without actually allowing them to make that decision and either be an asshole or be really loving. We decide, no, you're probably going to be an asshole. And so like we automatically are creating these barriers between ourselves and other people that they didn't put up. We don't actually know if they're going to react like a judgmental person that I am, right? And so it's just crazy. Like once I went through my divorce, there's some people that were like, oh yeah, well, God will never use you now, or all these kind of like things. But actually the vast majority of people were like, that's terrible. You take the time you need. Like people that were supporting me financially were like, we're going to keep supporting you financially, but don't feel any expectation to do anything for a few months. You chill, you relax, you figure out what's going on and where you're at. Like we're here for you. People messaging me. And I was like, people are nicer than I am because my response of what they would do was largely based on how I thought about people that did X or Y. Really, totally. If I'm honest. It's huge. Yeah.
So I feel like on your episode with Dirty Rotten Church Kids, you guys were talking about how like, I think you were talking about cussing and how like all the cuss words are allowed on your podcast, but then there's some people that are just like cussing, and like that's where I am. I'm still like cussing. Like I'll cuss around people that I'm like super good friends with, but otherwise it's like I'm still a very good Christian. And
amazing. We're going to have to try and get you to cuss at some point during this podcast. Let's see if it draws it out.
Okay, so that being said, like that's the stage I'm at. So like with all my new belief system, I haven't told very many people. Like I've told my husband and I've like given two or three friends like bits and pieces, and every time I've told them it's been safe. Like it's been like, I usually preface it with like, you're either going to never talk to me again or think I'm a heretic or something like that. And they're like, we'll still talk to you. Like we'll still be your friends.
That's amazing.
And like, they don't always agree with it. They're like sometimes they'll be like, let's talk about this more, which I don't know what that always means, but it's fine.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, people surprise me consistently. I say that and I hear every single day, I get messages every single day of people not surprising me or surprising me in really terrible ways. And I've been very hurt as well by the church and by Christians and whatever. But on the whole, when we're actually talking about people that we have quite close relationships with, I've honestly been very lucky and being quite surprised most of the time by people's kind of grace and compassion towards me and other people. I think people do as best as they can, and often that I think just having that framework as well and remembering, even when this person's being a bit judgmental, I used to be really judgmental. Of course they're being judgmental. That's okay.
Yeah.
Like I would be scared by that response or scared by that if that happened to me. So, or I certainly would have 5 years ago or 3 hours ago. So like, it's okay. No, it's really interesting. Okay, so where are we in your story? We are now out of Nicaragua. We've come back home. You're married.
Sure. Yeah.
You're like 19.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about things like when, the intensity of like the sexual purity stuff, your pastor's not even knowing what to do, apart from maybe go and tell other people that your own private stuff. So I guess take it off from somewhere around there, wherever you were going.
Okay, so my husband Daryl and I got married, and I went to school to be a physical therapist assistant at a local community college, and we bought.
How was that for you? Because obviously not particularly Christian environment, community college. Was that quite a culture shock? Because Mennonites do live quite bubbled a lot of the time. Were you quite exposed to kind of non-Christian worlds and things like that as a teenager, or not particularly?
When when we came back from Nicaragua, my dad said, Bethany, you get to pick. You can either go to public school or Christian school. If you go to public school, you're going to like have to deal with teachers that don't know essentially as much as you. And
Wow.
I was like, I want to go to public school. So I went to public
You're like a
school.
classic teenager. You're like, I get to be more smart than the teachers. Excellent.
Exactly. Even though I would not. It
That's
was
not
like,
probably too surprising to most people
I
hearing
mean,
that. Like, oh,
exact.
the
I guess
17-year-old wasn't smarter than the teacher.
I mean, I guess essentially just about like I had a faith and they didn't. And like I
Mhm.
knew better than they did because I had this faith and like they were going to teach me things like evolution and
Sure.
who knows what else? Safe sex, maybe.
Crazy things that you know much
Crazy.
more about.
Yeah. Oh, it's so sad. It's
It's
so sad.
it's so it's so what it is though. Do you know what I mean? Like you take a step back and you look at that world, that bubble, and the whole drive around this whole kind of like interpretation of a few scriptures here and there and tradition, and you go, of course they think better than like, like these
Yeah.
crazy scientists like making up crazy ideas like evolution and big bangs and stuff like that. Like of course people kind of like are like that. It's yeah, it's hard to remember, but taking a step back and kind of going in and going, okay, what was I like in that place? What was my thought process? What was my thinking? I remember I shared on another podcast recently. Oh, it was with Christina from Science Jesus Memes, and we were talking about evolution. And I was saying when I was in university, I had this huge argument with my course leader in front of like 50 other students. I was probably like the only Christian. About evolution, and I was like, no, that's ridiculous. There's no decent evidence for evolution, blah blah blah. And like, honestly, I feel sick thinking back to it because I'm like, that could not have been a good. That at the time I was like, I am doing my. They didn't have the God's Not Dead movies, but I was doing my God's Not Dead moment,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
actually did that, and it's like makes me feel sick. But today, looking back at it, I'm like, that is probably one of the worst moments you've ever had, Phil, and you didn't even know it at the time. You couldn't even see it. You thought
Yeah.
you thought you were at your best, right? You were finally evangelizing to this idiot professor and like all these
Yeah.
kids. Jeez, that's bad times.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I did the same thing to my physics professor.
Amazing.
Different way, but same concept. Yeah. Oh, I just cringe.
It's very cringeworthy, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, it's okay though. So I've in my walk through the deconstruction community, when like I've noticed like a lot of times people are angry at God and like family members, and yes, totally do both of those. But I feel like one of the things, another aspect that I get frustrated at is just like where we are in history. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that if I was 100 years ago, I'd be so angry at where I am in history, like that there was slavery and like,
right.
and I
You
feel
wouldn't
like
get
that's
to
just,
vote. Like you would
yeah,
barely be more than
exactly.
property still, really.
And it kind of makes me feel a little helpless, a little bit. Maybe I should dig into that more and be like, no, I'm not that helpless. But it's also just like, oh, this is so big and like it's going to take like hundreds of years for this to get
Yeah.
weeded out, and I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing for people. I don't know, probably I would say millennials, maybe a little older, but probably millennials and down. Like we have grown up in a time of such constant change. Like there's always something different, right? There's not been like 2 or 3 years that have gone by if you're under 40 where something crazy hasn't changed. Like it's like, oh, by the way, we now have these things called computers. You don't need to write stuff ever again. And also, those libraries you have to go to, doesn't matter. You've got like an Encarta CD. And then they're like a couple years later, like, oh, remember Encarta? Yeah, you have the whole depth of knowledge of the universe on something called the internet, and you can get it if you just like phone this number with your computer. Wait, your computer phones numbers and can download libraries? Like it's constant, and it's like, oh, you've got a phone in your pocket and it can connect you to any information in the world and any person. And like we've so much change that I feel like we have lost our connection to the fact that for most of human history, nothing changed in the life of the average person. Like they were born and died in almost exactly the same system, with occasionally these huge changes that happened every 500 years, 200 years,
you're totally
3,000
right.
years. You know what I mean? It's like, but we're like expecting these constant changes, but there are still things that are taking absolute ages. Now, some of these absolute ages are like 20 years or maybe 100, which is actually, you look back through history and it's like, that's some really fast change still, right?
Yeah, you're totally right.
But
Yeah.
it's so frustrating, I think, for people maybe our age that have grown up just seeing constant change, to look at things that we want to change, that we know will change, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one's watching Black Lives Matters marches and going, oh, this will still be an issue 500 years from now, right? Everyone's going, well, obviously in 500 years, this will be over. The question is, will it be in 400 years, in 100 years, in 10 years, or next week? And really, the difference is, what do humanity get up and do about it? And my fear is it's probably not going to be the next week option. My hope is it's closer to next week than it is to 400 years. And I can only do my part to kind of move that forward. But like, I think when we can see the end result and we're used to these constant changes, it kills us, the thought of it being 50 years, 100 years. And that's me and you, two white people, thinking about it, right? Imagine what it's like being a person of color, you know, Black, Indigenous, and you have knees on your neck, you have guns in your back. Like, it's even more, you know, frustrating, terrifying. I can't even imagine how frustrating it is to be someone that is looking for change, knows the change is coming, but may not experience that change to a significant degree in their life. That's crazy.
So okay, so that's a very interesting concept.
So that was like a full-on rant, but
no. Thanks for that rant. So that being said, like, you can only do what you can do, and right, like, you can only do what you can do, and
absolutely.
And it's like, okay, so I had talked to you on Instagram about like wanting to start a podcast and about deconstruction, and part of me was like I guess I go through these waves of passion, like, yes, I'm gonna like do everything I can to like basically be an evangelist for deconstruction, and which is so annoying to me. But then the other part of me is like, okay, you only get one life, and like, do I want to spend my life like trying to make other people see like me when I haven't, like, I don't know how to say this for me, because I feel like what you do is so valuable and so helpful. So I don't know if it's justified in me saying this, and I don't even know where I'm going exactly. Okay, so like, how much effort do I want to put into being like, hey guys, guess what? There's another way of thinking. Like, how much pain do I want to inflict on myself and others for that to happen, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then like, sometimes I'll be like, yes, all the information, like I'm going to post all the memes and my friends are just going to be shocked.
I'll suddenly have a lot of free time on my hands.
Wait, what? You have a lot of free time?
No, I was saying, and you'll suddenly have a lot of free time on your hands. There's no friends want to talk to you ever again. Or
my kids will still want to talk to me though.
There you go. Yeah, well, no free time actually, parent. There you go.
I'll show my kids the memes. Be like, guys, look at this.
And here we are at the therapy again.
Exactly. Okay, so what was I saying? Yeah, so I wanted to start the Instagram account about like deconstruction. And then I was like, that is way too big. Like, I don't have any, like, I have no, like, I listen to podcasts every once in a while. Like, I cannot do that.
Yeah.
So I started a podcast on, we're building a house. And so I started an Instagram account, sorry, not podcast.
Okay, yeah.
About that. And like, for right now, it feels very just like safe. And like, this is just like us being present in life. And and like, this is what we're doing right now, and documenting that and enjoying the process. And I don't know.
Yeah. There's something nice about stepping, it's not outside of your community, but like, it's about building a house. There's something that every human on the planet can go, oh, that's nice. I like homes. I like having a home. I'd like a nice home. This is a nice home. I'll watch people build a nice home. You know, that's a nice thing. And it's not disconnected from your community. So people in your community still can go, oh yeah, that's great. Look, Bethany is building a home. That's amazing. But it's also not wrapped up in that world either. It's not, I'm building a home because Ezekiel 2
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And so there's just something really nice about that is a bit more spacious, a bit more light. It's not putting a huge weight on your shoulder to try and help people figure things out, do whatever, like, which is really valuable. Like you said, it's a valuable work and it's important work for a lot of people to do, for a lot of people to engage with and be helped. But it's not everyone's work by any means. And it's certainly in the midst of like a pandemic, and when you've got tons of crap going on and you're building a home, or, you know, like you've got kids and you got all these different things, you're like, is this what I want to put my energy into?
Yeah,
I think that's really, really fair. I've been doing this just with my own kind of ministry. The amount of things I do, I just looking at it and going, okay, I'm going to start cutting things. Like, I don't do Facebook anymore. Occasionally I'll cross post a thing over there, but I'm like, I've got like 13,000 people over there, more than I have on Instagram. But I'm just like, I just don't like it. It's not giving me life. It tires me out. And it doesn't really work. Not many people see it. Not good enough. My weekly newsletters I used to write, I used to love doing that, and people love it and they reply. But I'm like, emails just kill me. I'm like, it's just tiring. There's a stress. There's a thing about, you gotta write one. It's the middle of the week. You know, they're expecting you. Who is they? And are they really sitting at their inbox hitting refresh, waiting for that email? Well, you must be disappointed, because I've written like 8 emails this year and we're about 40 weeks in, or whatever we are. But I'm just like, no, that's not giving me the same life as my podcasts, or as Instagram posts, or chatting to people day in, day out, or running a partners discussion group, or whatever it is. And I think there's just a lot of wisdom in knowing what is the season you're in, what is helpful, what is, absolutely. And so, like, I think it's good. I love the idea of what you were talking about, and I do hope maybe one day it kind of like comes up to the surface and there's space for it, because I think there's definitely room for it in this world of people going through faith deconstructions, exploring their faith. I think from your particular specific worldview, I think it'd be fascinating, and then from who you are, it will be phenomenal. So, but there's no need, and who knows, and it's fine.
We'll see. I guess, and also the other thing is, I don't even know how to use Instagram. So, and speaking of those emails, did you go through every email and write people's names in?
No, it does that for me.
Okay. Yeah. Because every time I was like, I am so special.
You're so loved.
I feel so loved. How does he know my name?
No, they go to like about 5,000 people, but there's software that like, when you sign up, you put in your name and it rips out your first name and it kind of puts the second name somewhere else. And then when I send an email to that person, I put in a code that's like some sort of weird code, and it inserts the name in that place. Which is really funny. Like, I mean, one of my friends, Timo, he puts like, you know, I think at one point his name was like Dick Bag. Another point it was like Ass Hat or whatever. And it's just like, it's really, he loves it, because then he gets an email from me and it's like, hey, Dick Face, I haven't seen you in a while. And he's like, he's laughing away and like sends me a screenshot, and I'm like, yeah, I get it. But it's pretty funny. So if you ever want to get really funny emails from people, that's how you should sign up to people's newsletters, because you'll laugh every time you get this personalized email that's like crazy. You know, hey, you worthless piece of crap, like sign up for some sort of like encouragement email or whatever, and that's your name.
That's hilarious.
So, no, but yeah, you might not get many emails from me, because I'm picking what's working and what's prioritizing, and so that's dropped to the side. So
I just learned the word boundary in the past year.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm just like, oh my word, it's so amazing.
Life changing.
I can say no to things.
Yeah. Oh, it's the best experience ever to be able to say, nope, that's not going to work for me. Yeah. You figure out whatever that means for you.
Okay, so whole new train of thought. Have you watched Unorthodox on Netflix yet?
Yes, it's phenomenal.
I just watched it last night.
Oh, wow. The whole thing in one night? I mean, no judgment. I watched like a whole series, like there's 3 seasons last week. So like no judgment, but I'm like, wow.
Okay, no. I understand your surprise. I also stay up to 12 o'clock at night, but so.
It's just intense. That's all. It's not like, you know, a carefree, like, oh, I'm binging like, you know, a comedy. It's like, this is intense. I'm going to watch 3 hours of it. Like,
exactly.
That's full on.
And it was so triggering. It was so
Mm,
triggering. Like I related to it on so many levels.
wow.
But also like, why am I relating to this? Because my family wasn't like that. So like, what exactly is happening?
Wow.
So I guess it's just the feeling of fear of rejection, right? Like it's the same no matter at what level, like the fear of rejection
Mm.
is for fear of rejection. And for her, it was like so intense in that movie. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
it's full on, really full on. Do you think there was other things going on in there, or it was just that you kind of could recognize that she had a fear of rejection?
I was trying to break it down, and I don't know. I don't know what it was. Maybe it made me think of like the stories my mom told as a kid, and I don't know. I need to think about it more.
Mm. It fascinates me. Like I remember watching it and just thinking, gosh, like she's so young, she's so innocent and in many ways like uneducated. Not in, I don't know, there's no express details on what her education was like, but I just mean in the ways of the world, right? She just has
Yeah.
no concept of how the world works. And I
Yeah.
was just like, there's so many Christians that in one way or another end up in these bubbles, end up not really knowing how the world works, making them as well, like, you know, something like she's like, and I don't mean to transpose this onto your situation because I don't know what your situation was like as a teenager being involved in a relationship that then ends up being immediately like, oh, this is the first relationship really is now the person I'm married to or whatever. But like those kind of experiences, you grow older and you look back and you go, gosh, I made a big decision there with not really much data or like, or idea about what I wanted or needed or looked like, or I didn't really know myself at that point and these kind of things. It's not to say that you then don't go, God, good thing I made a great decision. Like that is often the outcome. And we can also turn anything into a great decision a lot of the times.
Yeah.
But so it's not like you're looking back and going, oh, I really regret all my life choices. Sometimes I think that's part of it. But I think there's a thing of that of going, wow, like I've been through stuff like that. Like I know for me, like I was saying with my first marriage, I guarantee a huge portion of the reason my first marriage failed was because I'm an insufferable person to live with and I'm really selfish. And I'm slowly getting better at that, but I wouldn't want to be married to me. But a big part of it was genuinely was just like, gosh, my Christian upbringing and my lack of concepts of how to connect with someone else and do that healthily, and my concepts of sex, my concepts of relationships, my concepts of
Okay.
friends, and I was just like, it was so like limited. And I remember watching her experience and going, I had a great upbringing. It was really phenomenal. I was raised in a very worldly school, very rough and intense school. And so like, I wasn't like closeted in any way really. And yet I still could like that triggered in me. I was like, gosh, I feel a bit like her going into these environments and being unsure, not sure
Yeah.
who she is, not sure how the group will like, who is this group and what are these people? These people are the worldly evil people, and I'm
Yeah.
scared of them.
Yeah.
And actually looking at it, you're like, gosh, they were probably so nice, so friendly. They would have made amazing friends. I would have
Oh,
had life-changing experiences, but I was too scared to engage. I was too scared
yeah.
to go anywhere near them. How
I mean,
many girls did I not become friends with because I was terrified that like what, like we'd become pregnant? I'm like, I laughed about this in my last podcast with my brothers, my brother and sister-in-law. I'm like, I wanted to get girls pregnant from like the age of 13, like, you know what I mean? Maybe not get them pregnant, but like I wanted to have sex pretty early on. It
yeah.
wasn't easy. Like you don't just hang out with a girl and that happens. In my experience, you hang out with lots of girls and it definitely didn't happen, right? I was like, I was not accidentally impregnating any girls anytime soon. And yet how much decisions did I make of like, oh, I need to keep girls at an arm's
Oh,
length in case
yes.
it's inappropriate. I'm like, most girls just wanted to hang out. Like they weren't interested in me in that way. And I wasn't interested in these girls, most of them
Right.
that way, right? And
Right.
it's just like, but I couldn't,
Just
and
the
so it's
fear
just
of it's
crazy.
yeah, we just it's so fear. It's all fear based. Like the
Mm,
fear of messing up, the fear or not even messing up, the fear of being human.
yeah.
You I feel like you hit the nail on the head when you talked about like it helped that hearing you talk about how you view that how you view unorthodox. It's like uh when she went into her marriage, like just being uninformed. just the concept of being uninformed. And like, I went to school, I had a normal American education, I guess, but there was so much that I didn't even open my brain up to because of the fear of being indoctrinated by heresy or whatever. And that's probably what I relate to the most on there. Just that fear of like going into the world and being worldly. And like, even now, okay, so I started this new job just Monday, and I was in orientation, and the other people in the class left, and it was just like me, the teacher, and then this other girl who shared the office with the teacher. And I was finishing up some last minute paperwork, and the other girl started this song called Heather. Have you heard it?
No. I don't listen to much music, so I'm really bad when it comes to it. You're really lucky I knew who Enrique Iglesias was. Yeah.
That's funny. I had never heard the song either. But the girl was talking to the other guy about how the music video was really weird and she didn't understand it. So they turned on the music video and like turned off the lights, which I was like, this is kind of weird. Like,
this is like you're making some life choices here. You're like, we are going to get into this music video. Like, this is going to be a cinema experience, you know?
I'm just trying to finish my paperwork. Like, please let me.
You're like, do you want me to go put some popcorn in the microwave for you guys? Like,
exactly. Anyway, so the movie came on, and it was a little sketchy, or not. It wasn't sketchy. It wasn't sketchy at all. It was this guy that like wanted to like be a girl, so he's like putting girl clothes on, and like you like saw his skin, nothing specific, and I was so uncomfortable. Like, like, this is so uncomfortable. But then afterwards I was like, why is that uncomfortable? Like, it's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. So, and then I get frustrated at myself because I get uncomfortable about stuff like that. I'm like, I just want everything in my brain to be like what it should be.
Just reset. Well, what is should, right? I mean,
exactly.
What is that, you know?
Exactly.
It's so, that's just another story we're telling ourselves that's torturing ourselves, right?
Exactly. It was so nice when I was a Christian, I guess I still am, whatever I was before. And it was just so nice to have an outline, and everyone had an outline. Even though we were all in different outlines, but we thought it was the same thing.
Yeah. But it is easier to be able to, they put that thing on and you go, oh, this is about someone that's experiencing some sort of trans kind of identity. Well, okay, it's wrong. We're good. We're switch it off. I'm good. I've made my decision. I don't need to engage with it. I don't need to think about it. I don't even have to look at and evaluate anything that comes up. I'm just like, done, off, done. I have a box that goes in, and it's the wrong box, and I can move on. But like, once you start coming out of that, it's not that you get rid of that box and then you're like, oh, great, that's that. I know what I think about that. It's a good box. And I go like, it's not as simple as that. You go, oh, I've got like some baggage that I'm holding off from there. I've got whatever I'm doing in exploring what that is and why it's good and what that could be. Like, it's really complex. It's not going from one black and white to another. It's suddenly going into like this open place where you go, oh, I get to, and then that's art, right? The whole point of a music video is you're engaging with this music at another level, and you're supposed to go, oh, what does this make me feel? Why do I feel like that? What does it mean about me? Does it speak about my identity and gender? Does it speak about, you know, and you're supposed to be like doing, I mean, I don't know, I'm assuming that some layers of that. Maybe people aren't as intense about their music videos as I like to imagine they are. But that's the point of something, is that you're supposed to be evoked and to think and to explore. And that's exciting, but it is much more comfortable and easy to go, oh no, we've got boxes to put that in. We don't ever go there. We don't have to listen to that kind of stuff or look at that kind of stuff. Like, that's much simpler and more comfortable, I think, on the whole.
Yeah, so that's a very helpful logic. So like, when I feel the emotions of fear, I can just be like, okay, this isn't necessarily, it's not a fearful thing. It's just a guiding light to look deeper into myself. So and I guess I haven't really unpacked that yet, so it's still like scary, but like, once I unpack it in my brain, then
there'll be more to unpack, right? And then you'll have something new to unpack and explore, and I don't think it ends.
So much.
It just gets but I think you change from being constantly dreading it and going, God, not more of this work, to going, this is fun, this is exciting.
Yeah.
And maybe you're already there in a lot of ways. So how did you get from, good Christian wife
Mm-hmm.
in this kind of Christian context of kind of post-Mennonite, but largely still tiptoeing within the Mennonite community and all that different stuff, to being in a place where you can watch a music video that is about that and feel a bit uncomfortable, but also be like, no, why am I uncomfortable? This is good. This is okay. Like, obviously some stuff has happened in the middle there that has caused you to radically kind of alter how you're seeing certain things. What happened? Where did it all go? I was gonna say wrong, but right, maybe.
Sure, both. So Daryl and I got married, and it was hell. It was hell. Oh, there's my cuss word, right? That's cussing, right?
That was Kobe. No, that's not a cuss word. No. I got in so much trouble when I moved to America, and I would say like crap, hell, bloody, damn. Like, those aren't cuss words. Are you kidding? I would say like fucking shit and stuff like that, and I didn't really overly think about stuff like that. Like, I'm Scottish, and like it's just part of my blood. And I got to America, and I'm like, oh, you guys are spelling out hell, and not even using the words L, but using like hockey sticks. I'm like, that did not just happen. I'm like, am I living in like some sort of comedy? Like, and I'm like, no, this is actually how some people perceive cussing. And so, no, hell doesn't count. I'm sorry.
Oh, bummer. Okay.
But the good thing is you can use it lots now.
What's that? The good
thing is you can use it a lot now.
Okay, great. Okay. So we got married, and I was like, what the hell? And because it was so hard. It was so hard. And like everything I thought I knew about kindness and being nice. Like, so I have this shirt that says kindness changes everything. Yeah, it says kindness changes everything. And I can't even wear it anymore because I'm like, kindness has so many freaking definitions. And like Daryl has caused me to believe that. Because he would be doing something in kindness, and I would be like, why are you being so mean?
Yeah, why do you hate me?
Exactly. Why do you hate me? And
that's so funny.
And then I hated me because I felt because of all the things in my brain and not being able to accept myself for who I was, because I was never taught that I was okay just being who I was. So as per every good Christian, whatever, I went to God and was like, God, you have to help me figure this out, because I also have like depression and anxiety, so it just felt like hell. I mean, it was
yeah,
hell.
absolutely.
And
wow.
So that happened, and then I got introduced to the Sozo Ministry. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So and the Sozo Ministry was the first time I ever had a clear thought, like a thought, like anxiety, processed it out, and then had not anxiety about that issue. And I've been in not religious therapy since then. And I think it's called EMDR.
Okay, yeah.
It's a type of therapy, basically, which is what Sozo is. And it's basically, you start with a traumatic issue in your life, and then as you process it out, like at the end, you will most likely feel differently about it. Sure. And so I was probably like 22 or something like that when I was introduced to Sozo. Maybe later than that. I think it was like right before I had my son, so 25 probably. And this happened at the House of Praise. And that was like transformative. I was like, everyone, there is a God, and he actually helps you. And he does that by using Sozo, which is actually just therapy. But I didn't know it at the time. So I got really into that church. I didn't go to it because we go to a Mennonite church. We currently go to a Mennonite church. But then that church offered a class called the Supernatural Bible.
Okay.
Which Jonathan Welton led.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And that was mind-blowing because he taught the positive eschatology,
Mm-hmm.
and that rocked my world. Like trauma, just
Wow.
finding out that revelations actually already happened, and it's possible that we were reading the Bible wrong, and that the concept of the rapture happened in like the 1400s, and it was made up by men. And then I was like, so that happened. And then, I mean, just as a, I guess, progressive logic, like you can't believe that that isn't translated correctly. And then, like everything is going to be questioned then, you know, just
Yeah. Where else have we done this?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So where else have we done this? And then I was basically like, I can't read the Bible anymore because I don't have the education to read this Bible. Like I don't know all the hermeneutics, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stopped reading my Bible, which was like a huge thing because I was the read a chapter a day type of person.
Right. Wow.
And that was so terrifying. And even now, like if I tell somebody that I don't read my Bible, I'm still like, like scared or whatever. And it's always like a deep conversation, deep in the dark conversation where I'm like, I don't read my Bible.
Yeah. Don't tell anyone.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I still have so far to go. But anyway.
That's funny.
So yeah, so I went to that class, and that's where that train of thought started. That just like we might be getting it wrong. And then I like did this whole thing with like talking to angels and seeing angels and listening to the Holy Spirit and what did that look like. And then I don't even know. I think I listened to the liturgist and to Richard Rohr and some of his stuff, and that was really great. I listened to your stuff. I listened to some of Tim Mackey's stuff. Like he had, are you familiar with Tim Mackey?
I'm not familiar with him, no.
He talked about Jonah and how it's a, what is it? What's the word? Like it's funny, satire.
Yes,
satire.
okay.
So it's satire. And then I was like, okay, here's another mind-blowing thing. Like totally my definition of Jonah. And then I listened to the Bema podcast, which was also
it's amazing. Have you listened to all of it? I've only listened to a couple episodes and I'm like, dang, this is good. I should listen to this all. And then I haven't at all.
No,
slightly. Yeah. It's really good though.
Yeah, it's so good. And if I ever get into conversations with people that are like, what do you believe? I'm like, listen to the Bema podcast.
Yeah, just don't even ask me. Just ask those guys and they'll tell you the kind of context and
Exactly. So honestly, like technology has brought my brain around. Like being, because I live in the middle of the country and like we don't have a big city life where you're exposed to culture and things like that. So podcasts have been extremely helpful.
Yeah. I think honestly the internet is going to kill the kind of like the rural communities develop so much slower because of that, right? They're not exposed to as many ideas. They don't have as many different people coming through them, all the different things that cause cities to grow quicker and evolve and develop quicker. The internet is ruining that though. Like I've like talked to like teens in really rural communities and gone like, oh, what do you think about this stuff? And they're like really like wild progressives that are like people that were grown up in the city, raised by like, you know, like hippies. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is this? Like your parents are like Ku Klux Klan members or, you know, I don't know, you know, and it's like, what is happening? Like they're basically being raised by like Netflix and Tumblr or whatever, you know? And it's like, oh, the internet's changing stuff. Right. And when we talk about change and how change can be effective. I think it's huge, that kind of stuff. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it totally
is. So you got hit by that. And I think that's a common concept. Maybe one or two kind of things like a Jonathan Welton kind of series or something happens, a Sozo experience, and it makes you start going, oh, what if that works in something else? And you Google something or you kind of go on a Facebook group or something. And then before you know it, you've just completely unraveled something.
There's no going back.
And it's terrible for that as well, I guess, because back in the day, you might have a question and go, what about the rapture? I don't know. And you go to your pastor because it's the only person in the entire town that knows anything with any education. Or maybe you go to a library and say,
Oh,
is there anything on the rapture? And they'd be like, I don't know. And then they would just go, the pastor would say, no, this is the teaching on the rapture and this is what's true. And you kind of go, okay, because he's the only person that knows, and that would be
yeah.
the end. There'd be no deconstruction. There'd be no unraveling of faith. There'd be no, well, if that's that, well, then what else is that? Because nothing ever really changed. It's such a game changer, the internet. It really is.
So
It's
grateful
exciting.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sure
Wow.
is.
So how were you feeling in that process? Because that sounds like a lot of change, a lot of like some stuff quite exciting, it sounds like. Maybe like, like, oh wow, like this is a new way to experience. But was that also scary for you? A little nerve-wracking? Like how were you engaging with some of these like rapid changes of what you believed?
Well, how am I?
And I
Like,
guess still, yeah, right. But I mean, early on, probably even more so or less so. Does it
yeah,
get worse? I don't know. It's like, I don't know.
well, as you've said many times, like it's an incredibly lonely place to be
Mm,
and very scary and lonely. It's just lonely. That's how I felt.
yeah.
And like honestly, one of the main reasons I was really excited about talking to you was simply to have another human being that agrees similarly to me because my friends are all like, okay, even my husband, like he's like, I don't know what's happening. Like
That's
he'll
so
listen to
funny.
me, but he's still like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but like, yeah, I don't have anyone to talk to about this stuff. So thanks
It's
for the
fun.
chat.
No, of course, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a biggie though, the loneliness for sure. I get
Oh
that.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like it's I know that this logic is liberating and helpful and I want it for everybody, but it sucks being the only one feeling this way. I mean, yeah.
And you can't force people around you to feel that way, right? You can't change what
No.
people believe. You can't
No.
push them. It is something that people have to start kind of like looking at themselves and start pulling those threads themselves. And you can't
Yeah.
really make that happen. Maybe on some levels, things you'll do in your life or things you'll say will spark something, right? Maybe Jonathan Welton sparked something in you or, like whatever.
Mhm.
But you can't force it. And so you go, you're my best friends, but we don't feel very best friendy anymore. But I can't make you get to a place where we can do that again. And then
Yeah.
there's the grief of that as well, going, have I lost my best friend or whatever, right? And
Yeah.
that's
My
intense.
my one of my best friends is like she's so great. Like I pretty much tell her everything and she's like, okay. Like she doesn't I mean, she has 3 kids too and is single momming it. So she doesn't have a lot of
Wow.
brain space for figuring all this stuff out, but she's very like non-judgmental and super
Mm,
great and listens
that's
to me when
awesome.
I about all this stuff. So like she doesn't like agree with me, whatever that means,
Yeah.
but she's also super supportive. So
Yeah.
that's nice.
Feels like there's like all these kind of tiers, right? So there's like, people like completely rejecting you, people then kind of going like, well, I disagree, but I love you anyway. And then people going like, well, maybe, but I'm not that interested in going there. And people going, yeah, maybe, but they're like, I don't really want to talk about it much or whatever. Like, this is, and it finally gets to the point where someone's like, yes, let's talk about this for 6 hours straight, or whatever. And you're like, oh, there's
Yeah.
oxygen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest part is even, what you're describing there is probably unimaginable for some people listening going, God, if only I even just had a friend that would go like, oh, I think you're a bit crazy, but okay, let's talk about it. That would be the best thing they could even
Yeah.
imagine. But it's not the same. It's not the same as bouncing off each other. And because it feels almost like a monologue because the other person doesn't really get it and can't really kind of go, yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. And what about when this happens? Or what about that? And it's
Exactly.
a totally different type of conversation and relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
Totally.
tough. Yeah.
There are some people in my church who we've had like small conversations about it. And like, I'm usually like the radical one. And they're usually like, we still need to be respectful to the people in our church. And I'm like, I'm
Mm,
not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just like, we can have different thoughts and it's not disrespectful. But anyway, So that's helpful every now and then to have those conversations. I don't know.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
Yeah.
But,
How have you found it for your marriage? You don't have to talk about this stuff if it's too personal or anything, but like, you say it's not where your husband's at. He's not like in that place. Like, have you found that to be very hard? Because I mean, it brings up all kinds of questions of like, well, how do we raise our kids? How do we, like do these, like you've kind of mentioned like, oh, I'm still kind of going to a Mennonite church, like, it's like, you may not be as excited about going to church on Sunday morning, whereas maybe he's like, well, we've always done this and I like going to church. I like seeing my friends and I like hearing that sermon and singing a song, or like, whereas you may be going, not so much anymore, actually, not my favorite thing to do. Actually, I could potentially come up with some other ideas for a Sunday morning that are better. Like, how is navigating that been? Is that something that you have processed quite a bit out with him, or like how do you even gone about that?
Slowly. Except the other night, it was probably like 2 weeks ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to tell you all the things I believe. I was like, I think homosexuality is fine. Like, I don't think the Bible is inerrant. I don't even know all the things I said. And afterwards, and actually, I don't think we've talked about it since then. Super cool and super healthy. Just kidding, it's not. But we've also both been crazy busy with new jobs and in the house. So that's when I say slowly, that's it. That's how it usually processes. Like, I'll be like, this is this mind-blowing thought. Here's time to process it. And then we'll get back together and like, whether it be like a week or a day or whatever later. And then he'll give me his feedback. And up to now, it's just been the concept of like, our marriage is not based on our religious belief, which is helpful. I mean,
that's huge. That is really huge, because that's not the case for a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. Like, it is huge. So, I mean, we went through, so we've had so much shit to dig through. So much.
You did it.
Do I get a point?
Yeah, I noticed. We could have like a counter up in the top screen or something.
Thank you. So, like when we first got married, so are you on the Enneagram boat at all?
I'm not. I just haven't got into it. Like, I tried so many times. I've done like tests. I've like read like stuff on it. I've watched videos on it. I've listened to a couple of podcasts on it, and I'm just like, I just don't care. I just do not care what I am, where my wings are, where I'm going. I'm like, I kind of just like being whatever I am today, and it feels a bit different all the time anyway. And I don't know. I just do not know. I don't know if I'm a bit burned out by it all. I keep getting told, people go like, oh, like you got to try this person. They explain it better. Or, well, if you listen to this person's podcast, then you get it. And I just haven't. And I don't know. It's cool. I love that so many people are connecting with it. And that's great. But yeah, I could tell you what I am. I think actually, I don't even know what I am.
A 9, maybe? I'd guess.
I think 8 or...
Oh.
I don't know.
I guess I could see you as an 8th or a challenger.
I am an 8 at 76% match on 8 and 74% match on 3. So they're basically the same.
Okay. Interesting.
Whatever that means. But again, I'm like, I've like read books on it. I've read a book. I've watched podcasts. I've watched videos, and I'm like, and I still am like, whatever it means. It just didn't grab me. I've not retained the knowledge. I just don't care. I'm like, I don't get how people have got so passionate about it, because I'm just like, it's weird, right? When people get passionate about something and you can't, and you're like, I know this is a big deal for people, but like, what's the deal? So
it's the reason you can't get into it is probably because you have a healthy relationship.
That's funny.
So, well done on that. But so I bring it up because with Daryl, the first personality type thing I found out about was the Myers-Briggs.
Right.
And that blew my mind, because I was like, I finally have a grasp on who Daryl is, because when we got married, I did not know him at all. So we're basically the opposite. Like, he's a ESTJ and I'm an ENFP. So I'm like, let's have all the fun and do the fun things.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is the goal? And let's get it done as soon as possible.
That's hilarious.
And please don't laugh while we do it. I'm just kidding. He's not that bad at all. But
That's
he's
so
like,
funny.
well, actually he is like that sometimes, but he's very goal driven. And like it would just stress me out. Also, he is like a million times better than what he was. So I just want to disclaimer. Daryl, if you listen to this, I'm so sorry if I say anything that is gonna like paint you
Daryl,
bad.
I am holding this against 19-year-old Daryl for not having all his shit together, and marrying someone that doesn't have all their shit together, and somehow it not being perfect. You know, I mean, gosh,
yeah.
How dare you guys?
Yeah. So he's an ESTJ, and then he's an Enneagram 8, and I'm an Enneagram 7. So like our this is not going to mean that much to you, but so he's basically
it'll mean loads
driven,
to so many people listening, probably.
Okay, for all the people that are listening. So I'm all about like having fun and like looking for the good and like toxic positivity for sure. And he's like talk like details to me, don't make things fluffy, like be very specific with me. And so whenever I found out about the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs, I was like, I now have a roadmap to figuring out why you are the way you are. And it was so helpful for our marriage. So helpful. And so I don't even know why I was getting on that. I don't know. When I am straightforward with him about my faith, it's helpful. Like he doesn't like it when I like dance around the subject or whatever.
Sure.
And
I can see
I don't know.
that
I guess
really
he respects
helpful.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really normal. What you're describing though is like people take time to process these kind of things. And it's like, it's a lot to process for anyone. It's a lot to process when you're going through it yourself. It's a whole nother degree when someone's going through it and you're like, I don't get any of what you're telling me. So you just give me the details. I'll sit on it for a little while, think about it, try and figure out what I even think as a response and get back to you. And then you put that in the mix of like, I do this full time. Like I always forget that I do this full time. And like, I'm so privileged to be just like, my job is just to sit around and think about this shit. I mean, I talk to people, I like do podcasts, I do lots of bits and pieces, but generally speaking, if I want, I can go, I'm going to do nothing tomorrow and I'm going to just read and think. And most people in this world do not get that chance, right? They've got kids going on, they've got commitments, they've got jobs, they've got all this stuff. And like, it's so much work doing this intense, deep mental and spiritual work in the 20 minutes that you can grab today that's downtime to process it. And 3 minutes between, you know, running from getting the kids packed lunches for school's done to running out to the car, like you go on those 2-minute windows, I can read a little bit of a Kindle book on my phone. Like, you know, I mean, we do not have time. Generally speaking, most people did not have time to be doing like intense processing of this stuff. And I think, again, this rapid change expectation of everyone and everything, and realistically that sort of stuff takes a lot of time. And so I think having a relationship where the partner is, especially I guess if it's not, this is built on our faith being identical, if that's the case and it takes time, I think it rarely ends well, because when it's all built on we believe the same thing, that's not likely to change anytime soon. It's going to take time, if at all. But when you go, well, actually, that's not what we got married for. We got married because whatever, right? We enjoyed the making out bit, or whatever it was. And when you start looking at that and going, oh, we actually click on 100 different levels, and that's just one of them. There's room for us to process that in the 23 minutes a day, you know, 4 days a week or whatever you get, you know, when you can try and sit down and think about it. But I think, people forget, like, and especially, I guess, if it's not your passion, right? I don't know if Daryl's excited about stuff as much as you're excited about, like, looking at faith. I don't know. He's probably like, man, I don't know, golf or cars or I don't know, whatever. hunting. There you go, right? And so he's sitting like reading hunting magazines and going, "Oh, I want that gun," or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like he's not wanting to go, you know what I want to do today? I want to spend the precious few moments I have between work, kids, family, everything else, trying to figure out what the hell Bethany was talking about the other night when she mentioned, like, I don't know, she thinks
Oh,
homosexuality is okay biblically. And
yeah.
like, it's like, God, that is not what I want to spend. I don't want to spend my time doing that. I'm passionate about that stuff.
Yeah,
But
you're
yeah,
totally
it's
right. That's a
crazy, isn't
helpful.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah. But
that
it
is.
sounds like you've been very fortunate in that, like in the
Yeah,
process. As
yeah.
much as I'm
He's.
sure it's hard. I don't want to say it's easy by any means, but
No,
um,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't feel like you are saying that. I am very fortunate. Like every now, like I think when I first told him that I was questioning the Bible, he said something about like being on a slippery slope or something
Hmm.
to that effect. But otherwise, he hasn't really said anything that's been like traumatic or anything
Sure.
like that. As far as that, which you're right, you're exactly right. I'm very lucky as far as that goes. I'm very grateful
Mm.
for him being supportive.
Yeah,
But
no, that's great.
yeah.
So what are you, so you said earlier, you said before when I was a Christian, and you're like, wow, no, I'm still a Christian. Like, how do you kind of like, do you kind of see yourself in some sort of um, place that you can label, or like, how do you perceive yourself and what's going on? Do you identify as a deconstructing person, or like, you know, some people like that's their identity. Other people, it's like, oh no, it's just something that's happening, but I'm this, or I don't know what I am. Like, how do you see yourself today? And do you see yourself getting somewhere? Is there like a goal to this, or is how are you perceiving things?
Um, so I would view myself, I don't know. I honestly I don't know. I would if there was a religion that was like the I don't know religion, that would be me. Like I have
Quite
so many questions.
agnostic, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe I don't even know the proper definition of agnostic. What is the can you,
I don't. I guess generally speaking, it's to not know, to say I don't know.
oh,
So
perfect.
yeah, for the most
Look
part,
at that.
but it's got such a bad rap within something like
Yeah.
Christianity, right? I mean, especially if I mean Christianity is I know, that's like the definition of Christianity, isn't it? So,
Okay.
not quite, but like it could be. So it's like almost like it's almost worse than atheism to be like, well, I don't know. Like it's like, well, no, you do know. You got to like just believe it, you know. So agnosticism is quite a dirty word for Christians, I
Yeah.
think.
I
But I
mean,
think it's fair. I think even most Christians, if they're honest, are going to be quite agnostic sometimes. They go, actually, I'm not really sure if there's a God listening to my prayer or whatever, right? We've all felt like that even in our most passionate Christian days. So yeah, but it sounds like you might be somewhat a Christian agnostic. Is that a thing? I don't know. I don't know what these labels. I mean, you could use these labels 100 different ways. I could call myself an atheist, an agnostic, a Christian. I call myself most things most days. I feel like, and so
yeah.
it's tough. It's tough. But you do feel kind of
So
within that world of like, I'm just not sure.
yeah, well, and also like I believe that we have the opportunity to choose what we want to believe. And
Mm,
like so I'm walking through this life and what do I want to believe? And so like when I make decisions that for example for about heaven, like none of us can argue about heaven. We don't know.
yeah.
So I'm going to choose to believe, just for my own mental health, and because I feel like it's a more fun way to believe, that when I die, like God is there waiting for me, and there's going to be some level of comfort and peace and happiness when I die. Like that's what I choose to believe. Could I be wrong? Yeah, I could
I
be.
love that you're like, I gotta believe whatever I want. Like, I might as well, if I'm gonna choose to believe something, I might as well make it amazing. I believe there's gonna be some level of comfort. I'm like, that's like your high bar that you could give yourself. Like, I mean, I'm like, I'm gonna believe there's like marshmallow, like waterfalls, and like there's like animals made of chocolate. I could just pick one up and eat it, or you know, I don't know, like, and you're like, there'll be some level of comfort. Like that's the funniest phrase.
Okay, so you're totally right. You're totally right. Okay, I need
This
to
is so
work on this
funny.
because if that is my belief system, then like shoot, make it great.
That's hilarious. Sorry, I
Okay,
didn't
so
mean to like.
oh no, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I just hit my mute button.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah, I didn't mean to like rain on your parade or anything, but
No,
I just thought it was really funny
I
because you were
love
like,
it.
I can believe anything. Like I choose my belief. If we don't know, then I get to choose to believe something that's great. Some level of comfort would be fine.
Heaven's gonna be gray, I guess.
It's like, you know, your kids, you're like, you know, all right, kids, you can choose anything in the candy store as much as you want. And they come back like with one like piece of like, you know, like dried pasta or something. And you're like, all right, kid, sure.
Yeah.
Like, that's so
I
funny.
guess that's a very good picture as to like where I'm at. Like I'm definitely like scared to like make bold, beautiful statements about like what I believe. And like yeah, that's very helpful that you pointed that out because it is I'm definitely very scared to make know, a belief because then I'm like, am I starting a whole new religion? Like I don't want to do that. I don't
That's
want
so
to
funny.
like whatever I said, nobody believe me and like nobody follow me or anything. But I
That's
don't know.
so
I
funny.
mean
I'm gonna title this podcast. It's just gonna be like, you know, Bethany is how do you pronounce your last name? Is it Geiser?
Geyser.
Bethany
Geyser.
Geiser, and it'll just be like starting a new religion. I
Oh,
love it. I love it.
please don't.
I'll set you up a website and everything. Oh,
It would be
amazing.
gray. It would be gray. Nobody would follow
Just
the religion.
yeah, just all gray. Picture of like this paradise, but it's just like grayscale.
Exactly. We don't want to be too
Yeah.
excited. We can believe whatever we want, but let's
We
keep
can
it fun.
promise you some level of comfort in the afterlife. You know, we're not sure about golden roads or anything like that, but there'll be some level of comfort, like a mattress, but some of the springs are gone.
Exactly. That's
I
heaven.
love it. I think
Happy.
that's really interesting. I didn't mean to like make some profound thing. I just thought it was funny. But I do think it's interesting. I think it's really built into us as Christians to be scared to believe in something big, in something bold, in something beautiful, in something exciting. Like we have been taught to like be like, well, God's good, but you know, keep it a little bit down. Like
Exactly.
he's not that good. We don't ever say that, right? That'd be a funnier chant. God is good, but not that good, you know.
I mean, but it's true. Like that is our logic exactly.
Yeah.
We believe he's good, but also it may be his will that your child gets cancer and dies. Like that might be his will, but he's so good. He's so good. So your mom's gonna die. He's
Yeah,
so
it's
good. So
crazy.
still filtering that. And have you heard of the poverty mindset? I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, the poverty mindset. I feel like I have that big time because Mennonites are known for being cheapskates. Like we don't like to tip, we don't like to spend money, we are just cheapskates. And it's so hard for me to I don't know, I think I just need a budget. But like how do I break out of this poverty mindset? But even with a budget, like I don't know. Just trying to find how to enjoy life and not always need to censor myself
Yeah.
and the whole concept of I'm allowed to enjoy life and have good things and I can do my hobbies, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous. I even
I
need to say that.
I have this conversation with my wife so much. Like she never. Both of us are really frugal, and we don't have much money to begin with, but we're really frugal. We don't spend money. But
Mhm.
she like I occasionally will then like say once we've saved a certain amount, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I just bought something for like $500. It's like this cool gadget or whatever, and she's like, the heck is wrong with you? But I'm like, so I can spend money on myself is my point. She never spends. And then she's like, you know, she's like 3 years down the line. She's like, I've not bought any clothes in like 3 years. And I love clothes shopping. And, you know, like I've saved like $1,000. And, but do you think it'd be extravagant to buy this pair of socks? I don't know. And I'm like, what is happening? You know, she's from a very well-off family. Like, you know, I'm like, I can't figure out like, and I'm like constantly trying to push her to spend money. And so I think it's really common in a lot of people that have grown up in these kind of Christian. I think a lot of it's like this anti-hedonism. Like, you know, we can't enjoy ourselves. We shouldn't enjoy ourselves. We should be sacrificing for the greater good, for, you know, whatever else. Like there's this kind of like spending money on yourself is definitely not one of the right ways to spend money. You could spend
Get
money
rid
on
of
a homeless person, or give it to the
the,
church, or make a more practical, sensible thing. You shouldn't buy something nice. Or sorry, you're right. You're fine.
I didn't, can you hear all the bells going off on my?
Oh, I just got one, but it's fine. Don't worry about it. Happens all the time. But yeah, so I think that's probably quite common, but it's an interesting thing in our kind of Christian culture, something about how some people go through it. Not every Christian is like that, obviously. But some people go through that, and they struggle to dream big. They struggle to, you know, want something extravagant for themselves, to maybe even like think they're worth having these great things, or whatever. And yeah, it's just fascinating, really interesting. So where do you see yourself going? So you're in this place of like, I don't know. Do you see certainty at the end of the road? Do you feel like you're figuring things out? Do you feel like does it feel like you're just unraveling your thoughts and it's getting worse and worse and worse? Or do you feel like you're unraveling and then building as you go and you're moving towards something? Like, how do you feel you are on this journey? Like, what's it look like? Is there a trajectory?
I feel like I'm at the very early stages of all of this, and I don't have any idea what is coming. But my hope is that I'll learn how to dream big and get the confidence to do the things I want to do, and stop living a life of fear, and fear of this random cloud over my head of thoughts and opinions of people that I've made up. And I mean, I go to therapy. That's a big help for just shifting through all the crap in my head. I mean, shit in my head.
Nice, good. Oh, that's like the opposite kind of amendment most people would make. I like it. What kind of therapy are you guys are you working through? Like, is it the EMDR stuff that you're doing?
So I have had two therapists in the past 2 years, and so I'm still looking for the one, because
It's
it's like
tough, right? Sometimes, especially I guess if you're not living in like a big city where there's lots of options as well. It's
exactly.
tough, really tough.
So my previous therapist did a little bit of EMDR, but that was a bomb. She was religious, and basically told me that so my husband and I were going together for a bit, and she said that he was really great, and I was ungrateful for not like loving my relationship with him, because he's really nice, and lots of people have a lot worse than I do. And she also said that
Isn't that a totally amazing standard? A lot of people have it worse than you, so shut up. Or like, it's like, okay, but that always kind of holds up until you get to be the worst person in the world. Until you're the worst relationship in the world, like that argument kind of holds up for quite a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And she said something to the effect of, I only want to hear I'm right. Like, she was never allowed to tell me I was wrong. And I was just like devastated by that. I was so devastated. Like, what the hell? Like, I love hearing that I'm wrong. Like, I love like that back and forth conversation of figuring out what's happening here. And so basically we ended that. And so I'm on the search for a new therapist. So what was your question?
Oh, I was just intrigued as to what kind of therapy, like what techniques and stuff.
So,
like, it's just fascinating to me as people like go through their deconstruction. I'm always intrigued as to like what types of therapy have helped them and what types have not clicked with them. And I actually hear EMDR come up a lot, and so I actually need to check it out. But yeah,
it's really helpful for trauma. Yeah, and actually I had like dealt with date rape when this is a big topic, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I had I was date raped when I was a teenager. Wow. And wasn't able to tell anyone because of all the religious implications. And EMDR was really helpful in healing that process. So
Wow.
like I can talk about it now and it's not like I want to cry all over the place.
Sure. Which is, I mean, that's game changing kind of
Yeah.
change. And I can't even imagine like, yeah, I mean, I'm a guy that like there's so many barriers to it. Not that guys can't be raped, but you know, there's so many elements of like I'm not going to be able to sympathize and empathize with that on any tangible deep level. But like I can't even imagine what it's like when you throw in a whole nother layer of sexual purity and the
Yeah.
shame and like
Yeah.
it's crazy. I was just reading have you read Linda K. Klein's book Pure? It's really, really good. But she shared a
No,
story about this woman that was date raped as well. And she went home to her parents, and her dad was a pastor. And she told her parents finally. She was brave enough to kind of go home, tell her parents. She'd kind of been dealing with it at college, I think, when it had happened. And she'd never
okay.
had sex before. She's a good Christian girl, you know, all this stuff. She goes home, she tells her parents. Her mom is like, just doesn't even speak to her, just doesn't even respond. And then, you know, her dad just sits there and just in silence and then says, "What were you wearing?" And that's the first thing her pastor
Oh,
dad has to say. And you look at this and you just think, this kind of world of intense sexual purity, and the females are responsible for the actions of men and all this stuff, like something like date rape is unimaginable to be able to have to process and work through and kind of do the work involved to not be deeply traumatically wounded by. I cannot even imagine like adding all those layers of shame and everything else to it. It just,
yeah.
yeah, it blows my mind. And so that's amazing to hear that EMDR has kind of helped bring you through a lot of that. It's really cool.
It really has.
But yeah.
One other thing that just happened this past Sunday that just blew my mind, and it would be helpful to talk to somebody about, is there. My pastor was talking about his son and how he had PTSD because of his belief in hell. And I was like, that is absolutely, and like had massive emotional mental breakdowns because of his logic about hell. And then he followed that up with, that's why we're taking communion today, because we don't want to go to hell. And like, that's what we're being saved from, which is
Wow.
so, I, I mean, can you put more words to that for me? Like, why? Like, it's so blatantly wrong to me. But if somebody were like, well, hell, like, I just don't even know. I just,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know this kid. I don't know his background, but I do know a lot of people have some form of religious trauma, usually some sort of complex post-traumatic stress. And more often within the world of religion, more often than not, that is deeply tied into hell and our concepts of hell and our concepts of God as a judge, and he's watching everything you do. And if you screw up, you're going to hell, you'll be punished, or he's disappointed in you. And, you know, like that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, trauma, ultimately, post-traumatic stress, generally speaking, is linked to the fact that you have perceived something as a threat to a threat of injury, a threat to your life. Now, that can be something that's not actually physically a threat, but your brain has perceived it that way, right? So you can experience something like a loved one dying, and that your brain can perceive that as a threat to your life, a threat to, you know, whatever, and it can be deeply traumatic. And so it's not that it has to be a physical threat, but that's kind of like the wiring behind it almost, if that makes sense. And so
yeah.
if you think about that being a key component in establishing trauma in someone, they have to be so scared for their life, or scared that they're going to be injured or punished in some way and hurt in some way. And then you think, well, what's the worst type of injury you could have? What's the most, I mean, the worst death you could have? Like, even worse than dying is dying and then going somewhere and being punished for eternity, right? And then not only that, it's not like, you know, it's some incompetent like guy that lives down the road called Steve who's in charge of it. It's no, it's God. He's watching everything you do, and if he catches you once, you're screwed. Like, no wonder people are freaking traumatized by this concept, right? There's a man in the sky. He's watching everything you do. You will burn in your own fat for eternity if you screw up. And thankfully, we do have this kind of, so the beauty is your pastor is able to say, I don't know, it's your pastor, this pastor is able to say, but don't worry, doesn't matter for us because we got this get out of jail card. If we just pray this prayer, it's fine. And my son just needs to figure that out and it'll be okay. But the problem is once you start taking that part apart, you have still got these years and years and years and years of it being hammered into you that you are going to go to hell if you get this wrong. You are going to go to hell if you don't believe the right things. If you go down that slippery slope, we know where people go. They go to hell. If you get pregnant before marriage, you're going to hell. Like whatever it is, right? Even to the point where some people like, you know, oh, you've been date raped. Well, you are going to hell because you have done something wrong. No person that has been raped has done something wrong, right? You know what I mean? It's like, but that's the level of kind of twisted, awkward juggling of making certain scriptures fit certain ways and messing with our concepts of sexuality. Like, and so I think it's just really natural that a lot of people end up with a lot of this kind of religious trauma that they have to sift through and work through. I think it's different for different people how they work through that and what it looks like and how easy or hard that might be. For some, it is easy to let go of. Others, I know people that haven't believed in God or hell for like a decade and still are traumatized by it. They wake up in the middle of the night like sweating because they're convinced that maybe they're wrong and they're going to go to hell forever. Like, you know, and it's deep seated. But I think that's an indicative of the thing that I'm assuming this pastor's kid, like, that's a pretty like decent kind of picture, a mirror held up in front of you going, hey, what you're doing, not working, not bringing peace and like joy and, you know, all these like good things that we should be producing as I don't know, people bringing the fruits of the spirit or whatever, like, you know, terror, dread, fear. These are not fruits of the spirit. And yet that's the fruit for a lot of people. And I think we should be considering that and thinking about it. I think that's one of the reasons that hell is one of the most common stumbling blocks for people and one of the first kind of pillars to crumble for people that deconstruct. Because we all want to break that thing apart if we can, because it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. It's not loving. We can't really reconcile how Jesus would want anyone to burn for eternity. Like, we don't really see that in the person of Jesus much when he's hanging out with people. Like, I don't know, you know what I mean? He's not like yelling, well, screw you, Barbara, I know you're a harlot, you're going to burn forever. Like, that's not the Jesus we know, you know? And so it's weird.
When my pastor told me that, or pastor told me, when he said that in the sermon, I got up and left. I couldn't even handle.
Wow.
I'm not even. It was very triggering. And so I left, and I thought to myself, I've got to talk to his son. His son is actually in his 30s, late 30s, and it happened a while ago. And and my logic was, there's no way he can still believe in hell after going through PTSD. He had to have dropped that belief. So strangely enough, that afternoon, I was at a place where he also was at, and he lives like way far away. It was very weird that he was available for a conversation. And I asked him about it, and he was like, yeah, I still believe in heaven and hell. Totally. Wow. And I was just shocked. I was shocked. How do you still hold on to that? Like, it made you have PTSD.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's a type of religious mental health illness called scrupulosity. And it's basically religious OCD. And it's one of the, I've known a few people that have had it personally, and I've talked to a lot of people that have it. It's up there with probably one of the worst things I could imagine anyone have to be inflicted by. But basically, I mean, it is, you are obsessed with all the ins and outs of your faith. And you live in this horrible world where you are constantly obsessed with, am I sinning, am I not, or am I doing it right, am I not? But you engage with your faith probably more seriously than any person there could be, you know what I mean? And so the problem that you have is you end up in this weird kind of trapped catch 22, and it sounds like maybe that's where this guy is. Maybe it works great for him, maybe he's found some way to break out of that PTSD, and maybe it's just really believing, no, I am saved, and so you don't have to worry about hell if you really believe that. And so problem solved for now, at least, unless he has new questions at some point. But like, you know, I'm not presuming to know that there's an easy answer for everyone, but I know for Scrupulosity that the problem that you find is, generally speaking, the only person that's going to find freedom from that is a person that seeks help outside of religion.
Oh.
But the very nature of it is you can't seek help outside of religion, because they're the evil people, they're not to be trusted, they're worldly, they're whatever. And so you end up caught in these kind of rock and hard place, catch 22 situation where you're just cycling forever in this little round spiral, and you're just going down and down and down and down. And the only people that are really going to help you with a mental health condition that's wrapped up in religion is going to be a professional that knows what they're doing with religious trauma, and also is deeply unreligious themselves, not necessarily unspiritual, but certainly not wrapped up in that system. And then so you go to a therapist and they're a Christian, and even if they are licensed and credentialed and know that there's a set of ethics that says, I don't let my shit get in the way of someone else's shit, which is how therapists work. Generally speaking, if they're a proper accredited, you know, a doctorate in clinical psychology or something, they're going to be able to cut between those two worlds and do fairly well. But I've known people even that are that level accredited that have not been able to cross that line and still see this person's going to hell if I don't kind of try and steer this or help them. And so for me, you have to find someone that's completely disconnected from religion on some level. There's a program called the Secular Therapy Project. It's largely in America, but it helps people find therapists that are not religious, not Christian, but understand that people coming out of faith have these religious baggages. I think it's just kind of a map of the US, and you know, you can search an area and it will kind of put you in touch with people. And but I think it's so important that we recognize that religious therapists, pastors that go, oh, don't worry, I've got a qualification in therapy or whatever. Oh my God, like talk about a conflict of interest or whatever, you know. It's complex. I mean, I even say this when you go for like marriage therapy. I'm like, don't go to a Christian marriage counselor, because their goal is not to have a healthy Christian marriage at the end of this. Their goal is to have a marriage at the end of this. They're so warped by their Christian goal, which is to keep that man and woman together. I've seen Christian therapists fight hard to keep people in abusive relationships, which is unbelievably unethical and unhelpful and whatever. I mean, even if you're not dissolving the marriage, get that person out of there and get them to safety. And yet there's a need for me to the goal of my therapy is to keep this marriage together. Whereas a healthy marriage therapist, their goal is not to keep the marriage together. The goal is to help these two people have the healthiest life they can have, whether it's together or apart. That's the key, because some relationships shouldn't be together, right? You should sit down and after a few sessions go, guys, we should be working towards separating well, not combining something that's a fireball. And so I think that Christian component of therapy can be really dangerous at times. I'm sure there's contexts in which it's really helpful as well, especially if you're very much in that conventional Christian world and that's how you see things and believe things. Maybe it's okay. I struggle to say that, but I'm trying not to be too fundamental in my belief in absolute, and there's no place for it. But I don't think there's a big place for it. But yeah, that's fascinating though. It's interesting to see a pastor kind of admit that, but it doesn't surprise me then if his son's older and maybe has gone through some questioning, some doubts, some stuff. But that's fascinating.
That's definitely like my the first therapist we had were Christian. The first therapist I had were Christian, and that's my stipulation now. Like, you are not allowed to be religious if you're going to give me any level of advice or therapy.
That's why I asked about what kind of therapy you were doing. So I'm fascinated. I'm like, oh, if there's like specific ways that can help people, like I want to know. Oh, there's a woman called Marlene Winnell. I tried to have her on the podcast, but I think I'm too spiritual. She doesn't like anyone that's not atheist, basically. I think that's what I've come across. So she wasn't really interested, but she came up with the concept of religious trauma syndrome and kind of built a framework around that. And she's got like, she helps in lots of different ways, people kind of coming out of religion and navigating trauma and stuff. But it's a whole world of just messy navigation that's required. And I mean, generally speaking, just a regular therapist isn't going to really be able to do this because they don't really understand the ins and outs. Like it's a really complex, it's quite a niche kind of thing. I think it's not as niche as people realize. It's actually much bigger. But yeah, I think on the whole, within the world of therapy, not many therapists are very trained in how to help people with religious therapy, religious trauma.
The organization I was talking about, ATI, there's a whole website dedicated to helping people get out of the trauma they've developed through that program.
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all.
I was shocked when I first saw it. Like, what in the world? And then I was like, maybe I should sign up for it.
Yeah, maybe. Just make sure that you put in the subscription, your name is like, like, I don't know, put your name like Bill Gothard or whatever,
Oh, that would be so funny.
That'd be great. You get those good emails. Hey, Bill, are you fed up with ATI?
Did you hear about the scandal with him? Like there was like a massive scandal where he had this mountain getaway place and there was all these girls and
wow stuff. I don't believe it. I mean, there's been so many. It's so hard to keep track of them, right? I mean, what is happening? No. But yeah, was that quite recent?
No, it was a while ago.
Okay.
Like, I don't think he is a leader anymore. Like,
oh wow.
Like, he got taken down or whatever.
So. Oh, it's a biggie then, because often they can kind of just repent and they're good.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know all this. I don't know all the details. Yeah. I know there's some things that are going on. And I heard it and I was just like, I already have given up all hope in like one single man. So whatever, like you're human.
Yeah, no, I try not to get too caught up in it because I just get too frustrated and I'm like, okay, let me go find some good news, some eye bleach, something that makes me feel a bit better. I'm like, I just don't need more depressing reasons to think that evangelicalism is just collapsing on and of itself. I know that. I don't need any more information or any more data on how much that's happening. I'm well aware. I just don't need to know how much more they're hurting people.
Okay, also, how exciting is it that you are, I guess you're like the front runner for the data on all this information, right? Like, are there a lot of other people out there that are taking data like this?
I think it depends on our categories. So like people like that are the big dogs in research, people like Pew Research Center and stuff like that are collecting data on categories like nuns, guns, or atheists or agnostic. And so there's data out there, but I think for me, this is like quite a unique kind of subset that kind of crosses quite a few. There's atheists in this group, there's agnostics in this group, there's people in quite a few, there's still Christians in this group, right? So it's quite a weird overlapping group that people are kind of navigating. And so I don't know many people that are looking at specifically in this kind of more niche. So maybe I think I am. I don't really know anyone else. I've tried as hard as I could to find someone else. If someone else could do this for me, that would be great. Because honestly, it's a lot of work and I don't have time. But it's quite exciting as well. And I'm really excited to continue to kind of get more data. I need to put something out. I've got there's a thing on the top of that. Like it's like this thick of it's a report I've written, but I need to go through it and like clean it up. And it's not even that much data. It's just like, there's just a lot of data. But I'm excited to like start a second report and get it. I just enjoy, I've looked through the data. I don't need to release a report. I know everything that's in there now. So I'm like, all right, screw writing a report. Let's get some more questions out so people can give me more data. So I'm just very selfish basically. So I need to get the report written and get it out. And then we can start asking more questions. But yeah, it's exciting because I think the more we can give language to what people's experiences are, what they're going through, If we can create some sort of context of like, oh, this is what it often looks like for the majority of people, even just people knowing that will give them some peace, maybe give them some terror, I don't know. But these are kind of important things that a lot of people don't know. You know, we don't really know what happens to someone that starts deconstructing. We don't really know if like 80% of them end up being atheist. We don't know because we've not really looked and tracked these people for years on end and seen what kind of beliefs they have as time goes on. And you know, we don't know what sparks it for most people. Like, were most people sparked by, I don't know, woman inequality, or, you know, the Bible's inerrancy, or hell, or was it, you know, Trump being elected in 2016, or, you know, like different people have different triggers, but it would be really interesting to suddenly look at it and go, whoa, actually, yeah, different triggers, but mostly the same kind of stuff. Or, you know, like that would be really interesting stuff.
Yeah, that would be so.
That's what I want to kind of get into for sure. And then there's loads of other things of like, oh, does just being educated increase your chances? What about if you were homeschooled? Does that increase or decrease your chances of deconstructing? Right? I'm like, I want to know this stuff. Like, it'd be really fascinating.
So, have you read Educated?
Oh, I loved it. I listened to it on audiobook. It was great. And also, like, just the craziest shit I've ever heard. Like, my wife was listening to it recently. No, who was listening to it? Someone else was listening to it. Oh, one of my wife's family members was listening to it and on Audible. And I was like, they were like, they're not that crazy, really, are they? I was expecting to be more crazy. And I was like, how far through this are you? Like, are you on page 1? Because like, I'm like, this is some batshit crazy stuff. But the thing that blew my mind is like, how many like injuries did the one brother like he had like so many head injuries. Like it's like it was like I was reading some sort of like weird black dark comedy because I was like, this poor kid, he feels like it's just like a flipping in a pinball machine. He's just bouncing around off like, you know, trucks and getting crushed in machines and getting decapitated and like smash his head off this and a glass sheet through. And I'm like, this one person as well. I mean, loads of them, right? They have a crazy car crash. I mean, because there's like 12 people in one car with no seatbelts and they're falling asleep at the wheel. Like, I mean, just crazy stuff going on. Like the neglect and abuse is insane. That was my biggest takeaway. I don't even remember all the profound spiritual components. I just was like, holy crap, these kids went through some serious shit. It was crazy.
It's terrifying. And it was so justified. It was so justified. And I know I know that there are people in my life that would read that and be like, yeah, like, I guess that dad had a mental illness and like all the stuff you believe was true, but like, oh, he just was a little crazy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know people. I mean, I've talked to plenty of people throughout my life that would go, yeah, but they're exercising their freedom, their beliefs. Like, that's a good way to live your life. We support that. We don't think there's anything wrong with it. Who are we to judge if that's a mental illness or not? It sounds like, you know, I know people that would say that. I might have even said that at some point. Probably not actually. But to some degree, I'd have engaged with some of that and gone, yeah, like, who are we to say that they should be educated that way, or they can't hoard their guns, or they can't have their kids working in like insanely dangerous environments, right? People complain about like having to wear hard hats. These kids are the hard hats, you know? I mean, it's like, what the heck? It was crazy. I absolutely loved it though. It was one of those like weird page turner, like guilty pleasure of like read some sort of crazy. The thing is, if you can disconnect and forget it's real, it's fascinating. And then you remember it's real and then you're just like, oh, this is so depressing. Just so depressing.
Yeah. And I again, it was just very triggering for me. Like,
That's so fascinating.
Yeah.
So you saw yourself in that kind of family to some degree, in that kind of experience?
Yeah, to some degree. And I don't know why I need to dig in. I need to go to some religious abuse therapist or something so I can get these things figured out. But yeah, every time it's like this dramatic religious story, I relate to it. And
yeah.
I guess
I hear you. I do it all the time. I mean, and I'll read like Leah Remini's like Scientology book. What was that called? Okay. I can't remember. I'm reading that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm you. And I'm like, no, I'm not. But like, you know, it's like this thing that runs through it, and you're like, this is the same thing though. It's the same insidious system that captures people and keeps them in bondage and sets you up where it beats you down so you're a piece of crap, but then it gives you a little crumb so you feel good about it. and you're like, wow, they gave me it's abusive relationship, right? I mean, that's really on some level what it is.
Yeah.
But I do it with everyone. I mean, I'm reading another book. Gosh, what's it called? I think it's called Unveiled. I can't remember the author. And it's about this girl that grew up in a very abusive, fundamental Islamic home. And I think the subtitle is it's Unveiled, and then it's why the liberal left sustain and promote radical Islam or something like that. And so basically I've only read the introduction, and I feel really uncomfortable already, because I'm like, whoa, this feels really Islamophobic and quite like intense. But I'm like, well, it's not intentionally about all Islam necessarily, that what I've read so far. It's this woman was brought up in a really abusive home where she was literally being abused, and she was Canadian, or in Canada, and the Canadian government like got reported. She went to court, and literally the Canadian government was like, freedom of religion kind of says that's not very abusive, so back you go. And like, it was crazy story. And so it's really fascinating reading these kind of like things, but again, there's so much in it that I'm like, yep, that's not foreign to me somehow. Like, you can be in an extreme radical Islamic home, and I'm going, yeah, it feels about similar. And I had a great upbringing, but it's like some of these things you just can't. I mean, it runs through us all, right? We're human, and a lot of these emotions, these feelings, these connections. But there's something about religion and the way it grabs people, it holds them down, it whatever, and then the breaking free of that experience, it's something I can resonate with. I go, yes, I get it. So yeah, it's just fascinating. Have you read Megan Phelps's book, Unfollow?
No, I'm gonna write it down though.
You have to read that. It's the best one. Period. Perfect. Megan Phelps wrote
called Unfollow?
Unfollow, yeah. Unfollowed. I can't remember what it's called. If you type her name in, she is the granddaughter of. No, it's not. Sorry, I just caught up with your joke there. Sorry. She is the granddaughter of Fred Phelps, who founded the Westboro Baptist Church, and it is so interesting, and it is amazing.
Unfollow by Megan Phelps.
It's really good, because you're reading through it, and you're like, I like these people. They're great. I get it. I like these. She does such a great job of capturing what it was like growing up there, that you can see the twistedness and the craziness and whatever. But at the same time, you're like, oh, these are people, and they love their family, and they're kind of decent, nice, good people. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's the same with the uneducated, like, or is it called educated or uneducated? I can't remember. Educated, right? It's the same deal.
Educated, yeah.
You're like, these are nice people. They're crazy, but they're nice people, right? Like, love their family. They like probably have friends. They're like, they're decent, nice, hardworking, friendly people who are just insane. But aren't we all on some level, right? We're all a little insane.
That's what terrifies me, because you're right. We are all a little insane. And I'm like, okay, what am I caught in? What is happening to me that like I could be writing a book about? And
you're caught in the religion of, well, you get some comfort at the end.
Exactly.
That's so funny.
But then also, like, relationships I'm in, like, I'm just terrified at the thought, like, are these relationships healthy or are they abusive? And I just have no idea, because it's so normal to me that, and I guess the thing that makes me want to dig into it so much is my kids. Like, I don't want that for them. So then how do I show them, like, all of humanity matters, and humans are important, and it is important to like care about people, but also this is what an unhealthy relationship is. Also, I'm not sure what an unhealthy relationship is. And
we keep doing the work, right? I mean, this is like, I'm joking about how much I'll traumatize my kids, but I'm like, I'm doing as much work as I can now before I have them. And I'm probably going to then step it up even more and work my ass off to not be a totally broken, terrifying parent. But then I'm also going to, at the same time, open my hands and go, you know what? We've been fucking up kids for millennia, and we're here. You know,
Yeah.
life has not been as good as it is today for most of history, and so it's getting better. But we did get here, and we will continue to move forward no matter what I manage to do with my kids. Hopefully it's better than what, you know, my grandparents did with their kids and my great grandparents did with them. But I'm very aware that it's not going to be perfect. And I'm very aware that my kids are probably going to write some sort of like biopic and be like, oh my God, this is what it was like being Phil Drysdale's kid. And everyone's going to be, Phil Drysdale's kid? Oh my Jesus, I can't even imagine being that person's kid. Right. But like, of course that's going to happen on some level.
I still, people keep, like, I talk about this with other people and everyone always says that. And there's still something in my brain that's like, but I'm going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
My kids will not be traumatized.
That's so funny.
So anxiety inducing and unrealistic. But
yeah. Well, yeah, you're setting yourself up for a lot of disappointment probably. But...
Exactly. I don't know why I can't switch it off in my brain. Like, you can't be perfect, Bethany. And your kids will love you because you're their mom, and that's the only reason. Like, and it probably comes back to accepting myself. Like, can I accept myself as I am? No, I haven't yet.
No,
like,
I don't do that ever.
And maybe that's the most important thing you can do as a parent, is learn to just accept yourself for who you are, because as your kids see you accepting yourself, then they'll know that they can accept themselves and have a good life.
It's beautiful. I love it. Well, Bethany, it's been amazing chatting to you. I've loved it. It's getting super late, and I said to you it'd only be a couple hours, and we're already going over 2 hours, so we should wrap up. All right. So, of course, you're starting a new religion, and you need people to follow you. Do you want people following you? Do you want people tracking with you? Do you want to share your social media or anything, or do you want to be like, nope?
Well, I mean, if people want to check out our Geiser barn, not spiritual or deconstruction or anything like that. So
you just broke up as you said barn. That. So is Geiser Barn on Instagram?
Barn dominium, like condominium, but it's a barn. So we're building a barn. Okay.
So Geiser Barn Dominium. I'll get the link off you and I'll put it in the show notes for people to click on and check out. So
also
I'm gonna check it out. So
okay. Well, it's not very professional. It's just like
you need to embrace it. It sounds great. It sounds great.
I mean, it's really great. I love it. It's so much fun to do. And yeah.
Wonderful. Now, it's been great having you on. I really appreciate it. It's been really, really fun getting to know your story a bit more, having a face to put to the person I talk to online. Always good to do. So yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And well done for, this is brave as well, talking about your journey. And I'm assuming you're probably not going to send this out to all your family.
No one knows about this. No. Like, I told my husband, I was like, do not tell anyone.
That's so funny. That's hilarious.
Someday maybe. But...
Do you think he'll watch it?
Maybe bits and pieces, but I'll probably be like, why am I saying like so many times?
Oh, that's funny. Oh God, I never watch back anything I do or listen to it if I can avoid it. No. It's just too much.
I'd turn it off after like the first minute and just be too annoyed.
It's out there, it's done. Let's move on. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'll let you know when it comes out. It'll probably be a few weeks now. But yeah, it's great to connect and great to chat.
Likewise.
All right. Love you, Bethany. Catch you later, yeah?
Bye.